Well, hello, and welcome to episode 211 of Drink the Movies. I am Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And Michaela, you sent me this note. It's a little cryptic, little ciphers on it. I couldn't figure it out.
Mm,
So I had to turn to you to find out what we're covering this week. It says we're talking about the Zodiac.
we are talking about the Zodiac. So this film, first of all, there are very few true crime films out there that continuously haunt me. Like we
Mm.
covered Silence of the Lambs during our 100th episode, right, which was based on a book. This Zodiac is also based on a book. It's kind of a story about a story of the other side of true crime rather than the crime. It's the crimes itself. It's like the catching of the serial killer or the not catching of the serial killer, as it were. But there are very few true crime films that do it right, that leave you wanting more, that uh, continue to haunt you over time. And maybe it's because of the content itself. If you know anything about the Zodiac, you're going to learn in this episode a lot. But this one has been on the list on the calendar for a couple of years now, and we've moved it off and moved it off. But now we're finally going to cover it, and I'm super excited. And let's be honest, you totally cracked that cipher. You are the code breaker amongst the two of us in all of the true crime games that we play. You're the one
Mm.
who's like, I'll give you like this giant thing, and you'll be like, I'll be back in 10 minutes, and you'll be like, the butler did it.
That's
Make
that's
no
true.
mistake.
That's true. Call me Robert Graysmith here for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So this is a true crime movie. That is, is it even a true crime movie, or is it a movie about a guy writing a book about a crime that has happened? I don't know. We're going to talk about all that, but first, what we need to do is we need to go to the bar and we need to mix up a cocktail that is worthy of this film, right? Or it's at least worthy of Robert Graysmith and Paul Avery knocking a few back and chatting about crime. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back to mix up this week's drink.
So, Brian, this cannot be ignored anymore. What are you drinking?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we have to talk about that for sure. What am
We
I
have to talk
drinking?
about this.
I am
What are
drinking
you
an Aqua
drinking?
Velva, Michaela.
Right. So this scene, I love this. So it's kind of like it's probably like an hour into the film because the film's kind of long. We're just going to preface that. But Paul Avery, played by my boy Robert Downey Jr. in one of my favorite performances that he's ever done.
Oh.
He finally invites Graysmith out for a drink. Right. Graysmith is a cartoonist at the San Francisco Chronicle. Is that the right San
Yeah,
Francisco
yeah.
Chronicle? Is that what it's
hmm
called? Okay.
It is,
And
yeah.
and Paul Avery is this pretty amazing writer, and he is taking him out, and they sit there, and Paul is in like mid sentence talking about like murder weapons or something, and he's like, whoa, 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 hold up, I cannot ignore this anymore. What are you drinking? And because Jake Gyllenhaal's character has this giant blue like hurricane glass full of this bright blue. It looks like a tiki drink gone crazy. It's nuts. And he's like, "What is it?" And what does he say? It's a Aqua Velva. And he says, "What is that?" And he says, "Well, you wouldn't laugh about it if you tried it." And then the next scene, it immediately cuts to the scene where now they're in a booth and there's 18 empty glasses of Aqua Velva. And it's like, "Ooh, all right."
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And it's, it is cause for concern because apparently the Aqua Velva is a real actual cocktail that was, very prevalent in the late 60s into the early 70s. And it's called the Aqua Velva. It takes its name because it looks exactly like the aftershave Aqua Velva, right? Which was very popular at the time. So maybe,
Oh,
maybe Paul Avery was right to be concerned about that. But yeah, it is very tasty. It's not very complicated. It would be a terrific bar drink, so I understand why it gained in popularity, and it's pretty good. It would be easy to drink a bunch of these if you're ranting on about true crime and writing there at the San Francisco Chronicle. So if you go ahead and into your favorite search engine, type in Aquavelva, you're going to get a bunch of different recipes. The one I picked was pretty straightforward. I felt like it was probably the easiest for kind of a dive bar that low income earners that the San Francisco Chronicle probably would have been able to afford six of in one night, and it's pretty simple. So 1 ounce of vodka, 1 ounce of gin, and 1 ounce of blue curacao go into your shaker tin. Go ahead and fill that with some ice. You can shake it up, and then you're going to strain it into some sort of hurricane glass or tall like Collins glass or beer glass, whatever you want with some ice, right? Go ahead and pour that in there, and then you're going to just top that up with some Sprite. give it a quick zhuzh so it gets all mixed up, and then you can go ahead and garnish that with an orange and a maraschino cherry, the bright red American version of the maraschino cherry. Sip and enjoy. Michaela, yours is a little fancier looking than mine. So, did you go with the even parts? What'd you do for yours?
I mine was slightly uneven. It was a little bit lighter on the blue curacao. So I did 1.25 ounce of like a London dry gin. I used Booker's because it was basic. I used one and a half or 1.25 ounce of my a basic vodka. I did 1 ounce of blue curacao, so just slightly less of equal parts. But I did it the same way you did. I built it up in the shaker tin, strained it, and then put some Sprite on top of it, and it created like this really pretty like effervescence. It didn't change the color much,
Hmm.
and I put it in this little. It's like a baby hurricane glass because it's not a lot of liquid. So if you're gonna put it in like a normal glass, you're gonna want to add ice to it, or else you only get like half a glass full of stuff. But or I guess just add more Sprite. But I mean, it's real pretty.
Hmm.
It's real beautiful. And it definitely is something that you would kind of probably make fun of, like a manly man drinking at a bar because it's so like neon blue, you know.
Yeah.
But then you taste it and you're like, oh, this isn't bad. This isn't. I mean, it could be real sweet if you put a ton of Sprite in it. So
Yeah.
if people are worried about it becoming a sugar bomb, you could always do club soda instead, or like a diet Sprite. I don't have regular sugar drinks at my house, so I used a diet Sprite and it was fine. I thought it was
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't look to see what the prevalent like blue curacao like barback like brand or variety would have been. I have a very nice bottle of blue curacao from Giffords, which is like a more high end one. I would imagine that these, especially in like a dive bar situation, would be more of like the blue curacao like drink mix kind of a thing. So I'd imagine that these could be very sickeningly sweet for sure if you went that route, but still be pretty good. I did think that kind of about midway through the drink, I'm like, this is starting to taste a little medicinal. And I don't know if that was just from the way that like the gin aromatics and the blue curacao
Mm.
was working together. But yeah, this was pretty good. It was very easy to drink. And I could for sure see if this was your jam, getting a little out of control on these because they're pretty tasty for sure. And, maybe that's going to lead you down a path where you're, going to throw caution to the wind and, your whole family's safety to the wind as you pursue the Zodiac. But that's a story for the next segment. So, Michaela, now that we have our Aqua Velvas made, let's go ahead and grab another couple. We'll take that empty table over there. We'll lay out our notes, and we'll be right back to chat about this week's film, Zodiac.
Dear editor, this is the murderer of the two teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman and the girl on the 4th of July.
I want you to print this cipher on the front page of your paper.
He wants his code in the afternoon edition.
Graysmith, don't you have a cartoon to finish?
Spoiler warning for Zodiac. If you've not yet seen this film, we're going to talk all about it. We're going to talk about all the suspects. We're going to talk about the boathouse. We're going to talk about all the things. And so, if you don't want to know those things, you've been warned. You should press pause. You should go make yourself an Aqua Velva because everybody should at least have this drink one time in their lives, and then you can come back after you've seen the film. It's 3 hours from now, so we'll chat about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was released in 2007, and it was directed by David Fincher, and it stars Jake Gyllenhaal as the cartoonist turned amateur sleuth Robert Graysmith, Mark Ruffalo is the man tasked with catching the Zodiac killer, Inspector David Toschi, and Robert Downey Jr. plays the troubled reporter Paul Avery. As you mentioned at the top, Michaela, this was based on the books Zodiac and Zodiac Unmasked, both written by Robert Graysmith, and as I mentioned, this story is more about, I guess, kind of the pursuit and the writing of that book more so than it is about the Zodiac killer himself. Although we do see at least the interpretation of who the Zodiac killer was, within the film, both in the minds, I guess, of the real life author Robert Graysmith and David Fincher's kind of spin on things as well. But it was really interesting, and I don't know, I just popped into my head right now because we actually see a copy of the Zodiac in the film later on, kind of towards the end beats there of the movie. I'm wondering like how many times like the inspirational book for a film is featured in the film. So that was kind of neat.
Yeah, that was kind of neat, actually. So David Fincher actually did a interview where he was talking about how he grew up hearing the first time he heard about the Zodiac killer. He was a kid on a bus, and his dad had mentioned kind of offhandedly that, oh yeah, there's a serial killer out there who's threatened to you know kill a bunch of kids on a bus, and he was like terrified as a child getting on a bus every day after that. But it's interesting to me, the whole Zodiac kind of fear and fervor around the mystery and the just the terror that reigned in the San Francisco area, and really that whole coastline of California for a good long chunk of time, and how the books, because I don't know if you've read either one of those, but how
Mm-mm.
those kind of really help shape the way that true crime in general is handled, the way cases are handled. I mean, we can get into it, through the course of talking about the movie, but I think that that's something that has really uh, been one of the things that makes this story so quote unquote special in terms
Mm-hmm.
of the true crime, kind of as a chapter of true crime in the history of all things awful that happened, you know?
Right. Yeah, and I guess the thing about the Zodiac, right, is it's kind of this mystery that, was never, I guess, at least like fully solved, or is solved in a way that was satisfactory to people for sure, and it's still ongoing. Like you'll still periodically, it must have been maybe like a year ago, like there was another like break in the way that they were,
Yep.
kind of looking at those, those cryptic messages and things like that. So, it kind of this story has become larger than life, and that's even something that gets addressed in the film uh, by the detectives there. David Toschi saying, how there's been like hundreds and hundreds of murders like in this year, right, in San Francisco since this has happened, but this is still the only one, that people are talking about. So that's kind of interesting there. I mentioned that I'd never seen this film. It was directed by David Fincher, which means a couple of things. It's going to be good. We can go through David Fincher's filmography here, and it's basically all just like it's a bunch of music videos, and then it's just banger after banger after banger. So, David Fincher is great. He directed one of the only films that I watch every year, Seven, right? So one of my favorite films I watch every Halloween, and there's a couple of themes in David Fincher's films, right? It's not going to be very happy, right? Not a lot of happy endings in David Fincher's films. You could say that for sure. It's going to be critically acclaimed. David Fincher himself has been nominated for 3 Academy Awards, hasn't won any of those, but the films that he has made have been nominated for 40 Academy Awards now up to this point, and won 9. So that's pretty good there. And there's also going to be a lot of rain. And this film certainly does the rain aspect. David Fincher. Okay, let's talk about him first, and then we'll get into the film and kind of the different players in it. What are your thoughts about David Fincher's? Do you have any other favorites besides the Zodiac? Was this like your introductory film to David Fincher? What do you think?
No, so I had seen Seven. I had seen, let's see, what had come before this? I mean,
Yeah, so starting back in 1992, David Fincher does Alien Part 3. And then in 1995, kind of, his most famous work, probably, even though it's definitely not the most heralded, Seven in 1995, The Game in 97, Fight Club in 99, Panic Room in 2002, and then Zodiac in 2007. The following year, he goes on to direct The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which is nominated for 13 Academy Awards, so good job there. The Social Network, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl, Mank, and The Killer from 2023.
yeah, so I I might be the only person to say this, but as a kid, my favorite Alien movie was Alien 3. I
Okay.
remember my dad, I mean, gosh, it's 1992, so I was 11. I was 10 turning 11 in 1992, but my dad took me to the theater to watch it. Um, and I loved it. I cried at the end. Now, we're not talking about Alien 3, so I'm not going to spoil it, but at the very, very end, something very important happens, and I cried. And my dad was like, "Come on, Michaela, it's okay. It's an alien movie." And I was like, "No."
No.
So
Now according to this poster, Alien 3 has 3 times the suspense, 3 times the danger, and 3 times the terror. So maybe you were right.
maybe. I mean, it's when it became very sentient in it, like the whole, like it became a lot more of a I don't know. That's the film I think that turned it into the conglomerate of craziness that it is now
Mm,
because it was never going to go away. Anyway, we'll talk about that when we cover Alien 3. But anyway, I loved Alien 3. I thought Alien 3 was great, but it wasn't. Look, I didn't watch 7 until a little bit later because I knew it would probably mess me up. But I remember watching Fight Club and being like, who made this movie? Who did
mm,
this?
hmm.
Because this is insane. And it was David Fincher. Now, I've seen Panic Room. I've seen all of these. I saw Panic Room, didn't really love Panic Room. Saw it once, never again. I saw the girl with the dragon tattoo. Sorry, David. I think the original one was better. I loved Gone Girl. I think The Killer was actually really like again very like it's got Michael Fassbender, so of course it's subtle. It was inspired. It was kind of neat. But by far, I think the Zodiac is the thing that still kind of haunts me, which is strange because most people would say 7. 7 is absolutely brilliant, but I don't know because the Zodiac was based on something real. I think that that's what does it for me.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And Seven, it's kind of interesting because you think about the film Seven, and that certainly plays more prominently on the crimes being committed and sort of it shines a light more on the killing aspect of the film versus the Zodiac, which definitely does not. I mean, it does feature kind of those, but they're it's very much kind of in the background of the story that is being told in the film. So let's go ahead and talk about that. The film is basically broken down into two halves. I will say this right in the middle, when it basically like splits halves, right, and you get to the part, you have kind of the introductory bit where they're getting these letters from the killer and trying to decipher them and stuff like that. And then you have the back half of the film, which is Robert Graysmith basically trying to track down who he thinks the killer is, right, and start working on his book. There is like it's like 3 minutes long of just a black screen and some music, and I'd never seen this before, so I totally had to like fast forward and make sure that the film was still ongoing because it's just like a black screen there, which goes on, which is okay. But I thought it was a little interesting there for that. So let's talk about kind of the first half of the story here a little bit. I'm not going to get into the weeds on this because it's pretty long. There are a lot of moving pieces, but we are introduced to our characters kind of straight away in the film, and then we're just going to go as they're trying their best to kind of track down who they think the killer is, why it's important to find out, how sensational the journalism of all of this needs to be. And it starts with getting a letter at the San Francisco Chronicle. And this letter from the killer of these two youngsters at Lover's Lane, right? Get
Mm.
killed kind of in the opening scene of that film. And then we're off with the investigative aspects of the film, led by Paul Avery there, who is the journalist who is tasked with, I guess he must be like the crime reporter, I guess,
Mhm.
taking on the task of that. But kind of right from the start, it catches the attention of Robert Graysmith, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, who seems a bit infatuated with this story.
Yeah. And I love, look, I want to talk a little bit about the set design of this period of time, because this has to span from like 1969 all the way
Hmm.
out to like the early 90s. Um, I can't, we'll talk about the criticality of that, but like in the late 60s, early 70s, that whole time period where we're talking about what's happening, they have to kind of age the characters over that course of period of time. They have to age the area. There's this one really beautiful scene where they're building a building in San Francisco, and it's a very famous building, which names escapes me. But we're watching it being built over the course of time because
Hmm.
time just keeps passing, right? They'll get a letter, there'll be some fury around it. There's a bunch of tips. They will write an article. Paul Avery will write another article about it, and hundreds of phone calls will happen, and there'll be a lot of activity, and then it will die down for months, if not years, and then they'll get another letter, and so it's one of those things that kind of ebbs and flows over the course of time. But I really love the way that they held that space for that and tried to make that clear throughout the set and art direction because the cars change, the housing change, the houses change, and it's very subtle, but it really makes you feel like you're watching something that is truly has truly happened.
Hmm.
You can see the progression of like not only the people in the way like Paul Avery, right? At the beginning, he's kind of this cocky, um, very quick-witted, hard-boiled reporter who,
Hmm.
goes and gets thrown into this, and by the end of it, he is, living on a houseboat, I think, in like almost not squalor, but like he looks awful, and he's really deteriorated, and it shows like the terrorizing and like just uh the effect that not solving this case and being taunted for years has had on everybody that's touched it, right?
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Paul Avery's kind of tragic slide there, and it goes from like the highs to his run-ins with the police there as he's meeting with alleged eyewitnesses, right, and writing these things and not giving that information over to the detectives who I want to talk about here in a second. And you really kind of see that slide, right, and how like the weights of these things would weigh on you, right, if it's your job to be reporting on this, and like how culpable are you for sharing that information, and how responsible are you, and what part do you play in getting that solved. So I thought that was good. Robert Downey Jr. is of the cast, which is big and vast. We'll probably run through some more of the players here as well. Was probably my least favorites, honestly, of the characters here in this. I liked his later bits there where he was, kind of at his rock bottom there, living on the boat, and it talks about in the film how he died young. He had his trouble with alcohol and stuff like that. But this came out about 10 months before Iron Man came out. So basically, through the first half of the film, when Paul Avery is there on screen, every time Robert Downey Jr. delivers a line, I'm like, oh, that's just Tony Stark, because that's who Robert Downey Jr. is now. And until Oppenheimer, right? That's who he was. So he was already in much preparation for that. So I thought he was pretty good in the role. Obviously, he's Robert Downey Jr., Oscar winner, so he's good. But he was overshadowed, I thought, by both Jake Gyllenhaal in this film, who I really like, kind of in the middle. There was a little bit of a switch in his character kind of midway through, because we get Jake Gyllenhaal and he's very like shy and reserved. He's a
Mhm.
cartoonist, so I would imagine that the cartoonist is like the punter on the football team, right? Like everyone else is out doing their drills, and then you have like the punter is over there like doing his stuff all by himself. I imagine that the cartoonist is probably like that as well, right? Everyone is sharing their war stories, talking about reporting, looking at the way articles are written, and then you have the cartoonist over there like sitting on the side. So like he's kind of the shyer character.
Mhm.
Shyer, is that a word? I don't know, but he's more
More shy.
reserved. He's more reserved. He's not very combative. He doesn't really like stand up for himself. And it kind of makes this switch in the second half where he is much more assertive in things, and he's much more confident. And I didn't really like see like that specific growth. Now there is a big, kind of time jump that does occur within the film. So I bought into it okay, but I thought Jake Gyllenhaal was amazing in this, and probably the strongest one for me are actually the detective duo here. So we have David Toschi, who's played by Mark Ruffalo, and William Armstrong, who's played by Anthony Edwards, famous for being in the television series ER. I thought they were spectacular. I thought they played off of each other really well, very seamless, very believable in these duos, and I loved the way that they conducted themselves in the more investigatory first half of the film.
Yeah, I loved. Look, I don't think there were any bad actors in this, and that's one of the reasons why, man, I wish it had gotten more accolades than it did, because I really do. I take your point about Robert Downey Jr. The very first, at the beginning, he is definitely like the very first scene of Tony Stark when he's talking to that reporter. It's almost the same cadence. I get it. I still really liked it, because what we see is, how quickly, seemingly quickly, that can diminish a person. And more to the point of, Paul Avery is the only one out of all of these characters that actually gets a letter threatening his life. And the Zodiac was terrifying. So how much that played into his downfall is really interesting to watch. But I do agree. I think Mark Ruffalo and Anthony Edwards as Dave Toschi and Williams. I love them together. One of my favorite scenes is when they are sitting, they like every year, there's a cab driver that's killed, and every year on the anniversary of his death, they go sit in the same spot to like ruminate over the evidence and try and brainstorm with each other. And I love the way that they take care of each other. Like Anthony Edwards' character, Williams, he always has animal crackers for Toski, because Toski is always hungry. There's a scene where they go and Williams gives him half of his sandwich because he's like, I know you're starving. Here you go. As they're talking about pieces of the case. And the way that they brainstorm, like, why is he doing it this way? Why did he get in the front seat? Why would he wipe everything down? Why would he, if he brought gloves, why did he take them off? Like all of these things that they're kind of trying to get to the bottom of this together. And the way that that works is super special, I think. Now, I think that you see the toll that it takes on them. And when Williams decides he's going to go and he's going to leave homicide and go do something else because it's really starting to take a toll on him. It's you can see that relationship, kind of that breakup as it will really affect Toski over the course of the next couple of years, because now he's kind of on his own on the force dealing with all of this stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, and kind of needling along in the background of all of this, you have Robert Graysmith, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, he's excellent in this, as I mentioned. More of a timid figure, but you see him, kind of picking up these breadcrumbs, or
Mhm.
manufacturing these breadcrumbs, or doing what he needs to do to stay kind of involved in this case, which is interesting. Being that his job was a cartoonist, so he didn't really have anything to do with the case, but seems to always find himself alongside of Paul Avery in these kind of important situations, and having drinks with him after the fact, and kind of following up on all this. You'll see him glued to the television anytime there's any sort of reporting going on, and you'll even see him at wit's end, trying to get a hold of Paul Avery when he's out meeting some secret contact thing. He thinks it might have been set up from Zodiac, which puts a strain on his relationship. We actually see kind of the full breadth of the relationship. Melanie, who's played by Chloe Sevigny, which probably sounds way better if you say it with French accent. I'm 100% sure of that. But she's awesome in this. They go out on like a blind date, which appears to be like the worst blind date of all time. But it turns out it was the most interesting date that she'd ever been on, she says. And you'll see them kind of go. I really like the progression of time here, because you go to like Robert Graysmith's like apartment or house or whatever it is, right? And she's there. And then it's like a fast forward a year, and it goes back to his house, and she's there, and now there's a kid, and then the next time there's two kids, and like the third time there's three kids, right? But you really kind of see not only the weight and toll that it's taking on the major players here, the Paul Averys, the inspectors, on Graysmith himself, but you see the toll that it is taking on her and their relationship, and how much or how flippant Robert Graysmith is with kind of their own safety and things like that, in pursuit of this criminal who could be anyone.
Could be anyone. Yeah, I mean that was part of the terrorizing piece to it, but I don't. It's interesting because at the beginning of this date that they have, I liked the choice of Chloe Sevigny for this, because she's very like calming. She's not excitable, and you couldn't be, probably, because he's late to this date. It's the worst date ever. He's late. He is covered in rain. He's not like, he doesn't know what's good there. And all he wants to do is talk about the Zodiac.
And he's kind of odd.
He's kind of odd in the first place, like, and that's that. I take your criticism around kind of at what point does that turn into, because he goes from being like this awkward guy. He's asking people, are they calling me the R word behind my back? Like, and they're like, no, why would we do that? But they, but they totally are. Like, it's really a change, right? Because once he gets into, hey, I should write a book about this. Someone should write a book about this. Then he's like not even willing to discuss maybe getting like help. He goes down this rabbit hole. And I love the last scene between Chloe Sevigny and Jake Gyllenhaal in this, where she has taken the kids. She's like, I'm done. Don't call me. She shows up at his house. And even she says, the kids really miss you. And he's like, they can't see me like this. And she's like, dude, I don't know what to tell you. Just finish the book. Like, just get it done. Like, move on already. Like, I get that you don't know who it is. And that's what you're going to have to do, is write a book. And the punchline at the end is, and I still don't know who it is. But you need to do that, right? And then we see the very next scene is that the book is out. So you can only hope that, he's able to kind of be close to his kids and kind of repair that time to, the sacrifice of his marriage, because he was so obsessed. I would have liked to have seen more about how Toschi kind of spiraled, if spiraling is the right word, because we see that he's newly married at the beginning, right? Williams is the one who always takes the call, and he's the one who always goes and wakes up Toschi. At the beginning, Toschi's like, I've been home all night with my bride. Like, he's very, like a dedicated, hard-nosed detective, where he does his job, but then he always goes home. And then by the end, he, after Williams decides to leave and the force in that way, he's much more angry. He's much more like, he doesn't want to speak to Paul Avery at all. When Robert Graysmith goes to his house, he's like, I'm going to call the police. I'm going to get my gun. Like, he's asking his wife to bring him his gun. Like, he's just done. But I would have liked to have seen like the inside version of what that would be like for him.
Hmm. Yeah, because we didn't see that as much. Like, they did, it does a very good job of, kind of showing that downward trajectory of Paul Avery. Obviously, Graysmith is, the main character here in the film, so we see his as well. But yeah, if there would have been a little bit more from him, and I don't know where you would have fit it in. The film's already pretty long, so I don't know, like, to what end that would have been. And, maybe David Toschi really, it was that, kind of black and white for him, right? He is a newly wed man, and it's just kind of at his wit's end, right? Maybe there was no more progression than that. It's probably already stretched to the bone there. We do get a couple of others I wanted to make mention of here. You get the other kind of like police captains right through these kind of three neighboring counties in California where this is taking place. You get Captain Ken Narlow, who's played by Donal Logue, who I always think of from like Law and Order SVU. I think he's in that. And then Sergeant Jack Mullinax, alias Codius. Boom, right there, the great alias Codius from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Casey Jones himself there. He's spectacular in this.
Oh, I love him.
We are
Totally my
alias
favorite.
Codius fans here for sure, but this is top notch. He's top notch.
Yeah, he's only in the film like maybe 10 minutes out of the whole time, right?
He's in it. He's in it way more than I thought he was. He's from like the opening gun. Like, he's there on the phone, like talking to him. He's throughout this thing, throughout the whole movie.
Yeah. But you always, I mean, he is such a joy. He's so good. I love the scene when Robert Graysmith is like banging on the door. He travels all the way up to Vallejo, which is, I think, where that particular detective is, and he's banging on the door, and the guy who's running the front desk is like, come here tomorrow. He's like, I need one file. Elias comes out, and he's got a cup of coffee, and he's really slow because he's like, I think you're losing it, man, but I'll let you in. We're gonna move real slow. I loved him. And I want to talk a little bit about the coordination of efforts here. One of the things that made the Zodiac killer so scary was that he knew that no one talked to each other. No police officers or groups, in different, seemingly close together places. There was no database back then. There was nothing it's way harder now to commit a crime, guys and girls, people of all. Like, it was way harder. It's way harder to do it now because everything is so synced. Because all of these crimes happened in little different jurisdictions, it took a long time to even string together that they were connected in any way, let alone like connect evidence and like do DNA testing and fingerprint testing and all of that. And so somebody had to coordinate all of that. And that was a big piece of what made this so hard. And so I love all the different kind of characters that were acted out. You had the Vallejo police, you had this Port Smith guy, you had obviously San Francisco, I mean, there were like 4 or 5 different groups of detectives that were trying to solve their particular cases. The FBI was getting involved. Then you had the handwriting analysis folks. I mean, it was just this great crew of people trying to figure this out with, I mean, we didn't have any technology that we have today. It's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. And then one other I wanted to make mention of here before we just kind of talk about individual scenes and things is John Carroll Lynch, who plays Arthur Lee Allen. You might not think you know who John Carroll Lynch is, but you do because he's been in everything. He has like 136 acting credits, and he is like a true like consummate professional. He's always excellent. In anything that he ever does. Probably his most notable role would have been playing Norm in Fargo, but he's been in like everything, and he's always excellent in it. I love him, as the alleged Zodiac killer there. Just like his cadence, you'll see him like shuffling there when he's doing like his warehouse job. We don't get a lot of time with him. Then later in the film, when he's working at this like I don't know like hardware store kind of thing, and Robert Graysmith goes and kind of has a little confrontation with him where they just kind of lock eyes and realize who each other are, who each other thinks that the other person is. But he's excellent in this as well as portraying Arthur Lee Allen, who is who everyone kind of assumed to be or still assumes to be or have been the Zodiac killer. So Michaela, any kind of favorite like scenes in the movie? I wanted to give a shout to the props department because there are a few locations, apartments, office buildings, that boat we mentioned, this very, very creepy dude's basement where he has all of the old film reels. The props department must have had like an unlimited budget to buy stuff to put in all of these places because it looked real good.
Yeah, looked real good. That basement scene, I remember the first time seeing this and I was like, wait a minute. Is this going to turn into one of those things where he like barely makes it out of the basement alive and he finds a person in the basement or something? And I was like, nah, this is based on a true story. And I knew a little bit about the Zodiac. So I was like, that can't be it. But what is happening here? Because that was terrifying. That was a terrifying scene. And the poor guy must have known that he was scaring like Robert Graysmith to death, you know? And
Mhm.
but for the sake of the film, I don't know. Yeah, no, it looked really good. I think I've talked about most of my favorite scenes. I didn't know if there were any standout ones that you wanted to bring up.
There wasn't anything really that stood out. As I mentioned, it's a David Fincher film, so there's lots and lots of rain, right? It's very atmospheric in that way. It's very dark and dreary, and that certainly is the case here. Jake Gyllenhaal spends like, especially like the second half of the film, like wet at all times, basically, where he's been caught out in the rain. That's pretty good. They did do a lot of special effects shots, which was kind of out of the norm, kind of, for 2007. Like there are some just absolutely amazing like overhead of like the city of San Francisco shots, following these cars and things. And apparently those were all done with through CGI, but they all look really, really spectacular. And that's part of the way you can tell the story is you have to do things like that, for budgetary reasons and time reasons, because you mentioned it, Michaela, this film, it spans a long time, right? They get that first letter, I think it's in 1968, right? And then kind of the final scenes in the film are like in 1983, right? Oh, when the book comes out and he has that kind of confrontation. So, it spans over the course of whatever that is, like 15 years, something like that. So, times change, especially then, things were moving rapidly. You'd see the buildings being built, and obviously that was all done at the hands of digital artists. So that was really spectacular. I loved kind of that kind of addition to it,
Mhm.
where you think of something like Seven, which is, very, um, compared to this and the way that it looks and feels, very like low budget, right? Like more like guerrilla type of thing. And this is a little bit more kind of polished to that sense. But I thought that it looked really, really good, especially like I said, following those cars throughout. So you see a lot of really neat lighting, of course, because David Fincher, especially in like the street lights and stuff of the taxi cab murder and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, I don't know. I think that the piece there's so many pieces of it that I really enjoyed. I think I mean, it doesn't get the accolades that a lot of his other films do, and that's probably fair. But I still think um there are pieces of it that will still haunt me, like the last scene. So in actuality, I think it goes all the way up to like 1991 because that's when Mike Faggy, who was the first person. So he and his girlfriend, they were both
Oh, right.
shot in the 19 in on July 4th, 1969, I want to say, but he survived. And it was in 1991 where he identified someone definitively in the in a lineup and said, I know
Hmm.
who shot me. That's the person who shot me, right? And so that's kind of the second to last scene at the end of the film. I don't know. I think that because it's interesting because I think you're right. This isn't really the story about the Zodiac. This is a story about all the people that were trying to catch the Zodiac and write a book about the Zodiac and were affected by the Zodiac than actually the Zodiac themselves. Because we still don't know. Like at the end, there's a couple of blurbs on the screen where it talks about like, kind of the aftermath and what ends up happening to all of the other people. And the Zodiac case is still not solved definitively, right? So,
Hmm.
and now it's been nigh on 60 years since any of that stuff happened. So, well, we may never know. I mean, there's been brand new evidence this last year, but we may never know definitively what happened and who it was and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, I think that that's one of the reasons why it's still haunting, and the effect that happened not only on the victims but on the people who were trying without success to like catch them and
Hmm.
then like not just knowing who it is because Robert Graysmith feels like he knew who it was, right? I mean, that's the whole thing at the end when he goes to see um, Arthur Lee Allen in a hardware store, right? He wants to look at him and just know that it's him. Um, that's not the same as being able to prove it and then bring him to justice. And so I think I don't know. This film really haunted me. I've only seen it twice, believe it or not. I saw it in the film in the theater when it came out, and then I saw it again for the sake of this pod. But it has stuck with me since 2007 when it was made, and I think that's pretty special considering I see a lot of movies. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was because Robert Downey Jr. I think stuck with you
Oh, maybe.
there for
I
sure.
mean, he got
Maybe
me
it was that.
there.
Maybe it was
Maybe
that.
that's it.
So, yeah. So absolutely. So that is the Zodiac. It's a really well crafted film. So if you're into that, if you're into true crime things, if you're into David Fincher's this sad style of movie making, you should definitely check it out because it's well worth your time. It is a little long. It felt maybe just a hair long, watching it last night, but I don't know what you would have trimmed for time there. It seemed like it was paced really well. It was just just a bulk of time. To watch it. So definitely set that time aside and go ahead and make yourself up an Aqua Velva to have while you're watching it, to talk about all those case files and stuff like that. If you do make up an Aqua Velva or want to see pictures of ours, you can certainly do that on the social medias and send us pictures of yours our way. You can do that on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. It's at Drink the Movies, and on Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. You can go to the website www.drinkthemovies.com for episode recaps, for recipes, for links to the merchandise shop, to Patreon, to Drink the Video Games. All that stuff there is on the website. So appreciate anyone who goes and checks that stuff out. Michaela, all the listeners want to make sure that they are subscribed to the podcast out there, so that way they get the lobby bar, they get our new episodes as they drop on Thursdays. Where can they do that?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are supported and distributed. We do 2 drops a week here at Drink the Movies. I guarantee your button, your rectangle, whatever you're listening to us on, has a subscribe button. We do our lobby bars, which are really fun, talking about the box office and an easy cocktail that everybody, including you, can make. And then our deep dives like this one, which turns out this cocktail was pretty easy, but sometimes we get a little nuts. But we're really knocked out by the amount of support that we have. We love to take requests and talk about movies. So, if you're liking what you're hearing, leave us a 5-star review, share us on all the social medias because it really helps us get all the Drink the Movies out there.
Absolutely. So that is going to wrap it up for episode 211, Zodiac. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time on
Drink
Drink
the
the
Movies.
Movies.
You wouldn't say that if you tried it.
It's an Aqua Velva. It's really good. You should try it.